It was the day the internet blew up. One leaked video caused shockwaves on social media, and the Brown family wasn't reality TV's messy but lovable family any longer. Devoted Sister Wives fans were shocked as the video pulled back the veil on the carefully built persona TLC had cultivated for more than a decade. What we witnessed wasn't merely family squabbling, it was something raw, disturbingly uncomforting, and utterly unedited. The suppressed feelings, the unspoken power struggles, the sort of reality too complicated for prime time. That video did not merely go viral, it exploded. In seconds, rumor became fact. All the rumors, the fan speculations, the foreshadowing. It was all there, in the open. And at last, the audience saw the family for what it actually was. Not only broken, but breaking for years. Hi everyone, I'm Anya, and this is Botten, your one-stop shop if you're tired of sugar-coated news headlines and wish to look deeper into the whys behind the scandals. After we dive in, remember to subscribe and leave your initial reaction to that leaked video in the comments. Were you shocked, or did it reveal all you already thought? Now let's lift the curtain. At the center of the maelstrom is none other than Kody Brown, the fellow who made his fame on the premise of togetherness and spiritual plural marriage. But behind that happy-go-lucky facade was a guy who was desperate to maintain control, even if it cost him emotional intimacy and family harmony. Then Tony Padron entered the picture. For years he said nothing, a supporting player not often engaged in the family intrigue. But then, all of a sudden, his silence was shattered. And when he did speak, it was with the type of clarity you can't help but hear. Kody, his wife, was caught between family obligation and hard reality. In the meantime, Christine and Janelle, both original wives, sat on the sidelines while their daughters, such as Gwendlyn and Ysabel, were swept up into a toxic dynamic none of them willingly signed on for. So what actually went down when the cameras weren't rolling? Why did it take a leaked video to reveal what was obviously brewing behind the scenes for so long? And most importantly, how did one little clip end up taking down an empire founded on family values? Stay tuned, because what's about to come is going to make you view the whole Brown saga differently. On the surface, the Browns were the quintessential blended family, an odd, chaotic, loving experiment that somehow managed. TLC provided us with the laughter, the road trips, the couch therapy sessions, and those legendary brown leather conversations. Kody was the goofy dad, all energy and clueless charm. The wives, Christine, Janelle, Mary, and later Robin, were portrayed as strong individual women, bound together by love and devotion to their unorthodox family structure. But did you notice, if you were paying attention, tension creeping in, season by season, subtle changes that didn't quite fit the happy story? Kody's modesty rules, the way he'd interrupt his wives or dismiss their opinions. Remember that prom dress drama with Ysabel? That wasn't about a dress, it was about control. Or when Gwen shaved her head and Kody referred to her as too manly. These were not light-hearted dad jokes, but rather warning signs waving in the open, and the wives caught on. Christine, who had once been the light and heat of the family, started to fade. Janelle, ever the logical, practical one, found herself wondering if her voice even counted. Mary retreated further into the shadows. And Robin? She spoke up for Kody, but her body language at family gatherings said otherwise. And then COVID came along, and everything came crashing down. Kody's rules tightened. The already tenuous togetherness was starting to break down. Silences grew longer, tensions ran higher, and the emotional distance became all but unbearable. Off-screen, the cracks became impossible to conceal. Daughters shunned the spotlight, wives stopped faking. But TLC continued to film, artfully editing, polishing, portraying the Browns as odd but endearing. But beneath that shiny veneer, it was all coming apart. What we didn't notice were the stolen looks, the tension-filled talks in the background, the way the daughters gazed at their dad with disdain, or the way the wives began fantasizing about lives they no longer centered around him. The cracks weren't fresh. We'd just never been permitted to notice them, until now. Still with me, because this is where it gets even more personal. Tony Padron did not crave the spotlight. He married into the Brown family in private, without publicity. But with that came witnessing the reality close up, not what was shown on air, but what was strategically edited out. He witnessed the authority Kody's words held, how they sucked the energy out of a room or changed the dynamics in an instant. Tony understood where the cameras ended and the actual drama started. He occupied two spaces, insider and outsider, and that allowed him to have a unique view, one that didn't come from scripting or editing. He witnessed the manipulation, the veiled jabs, the emotional burden that the women, and particularly the daughters, had been carrying for decades. And when he finally spoke up, he did what TLC never had the courage to do. He spoke the truth. Hook for next section. If continuing. What Tony discovered, and how the rest of the family reacted, was a turning point in the sister-wives drama. And let me tell you, what happens next will have you questioning everything you've ever believed about the Browns. It began with covert stares, a change in attitude, the manner in which the daughters would narrow just slightly whenever their dad started critiquing their attire, decisions, or personalities. Tony caught it all, particularly the way Mykelti would withdraw emotionally following family gatherings, the way she'd scroll endlessly through social media, reading comments from viewers who complimented a representation of their family that simply didn't exist. That unease didn't come all at once. It crept on him slowly. But soon Tony couldn't shake it any longer. Originally, he pushed away the nagging sensation in his stomach, convinced himself he was being paranoid. Perhaps this was the chaos that accompanies a large, plural home. But then he started connecting the dots. The remarks Kody made about Ysabel's prom dress that seemed to suck the light out of Mykelti's eyes. The cold silence after a comment about Gwendlyn's haircut that turned the air in the room into ice. It wasn't just happening, it was repeating, over and over. The same dynamics, the same controlling undertones. Patterns that were no longer ignorable. And one evening, late, still, when the twins had finally settled down for the night, Tony ended his silence. As Mykelti stood ironing, Tony spoke. He told her all he'd seen, how the girls were treated, the way he increasingly felt, the weight of emotional strain over every family gathering. Mykelti stilled. For her, this was home. She had survived it, but to hear it talked about by someone outside, spoken out loud, dispelled the fantasy in a way nothing else could. And for Tony, the danger of speaking out was real. How would Kody react? Would fans revolt against him? Would the family ostracize him? But silence was no longer an option. To make sense of it all, Tony made a private video. It wasn't for the world. It wasn't a call-out. It was a confession. Alone in his car with a shaking voice, he unloaded everything he'd kept inside. Fear of backlash, fear of being misinterpreted, fear of hurting people he cared about. It all poured out. But stronger than any fear was the necessity to tell the truth. The plan was never for anyone to see that footage. But as anyone familiar with modern tech knows, privacy is fragile. Whether it was a cloud sync, a shared phone, or just a simple misstep, the video made its way into the public domain. And once it did, there was no stopping the storm that followed. The web exploded like fire. Fans who had long suspected chinks under the Browns' glossy facade finally felt justified. Older episodes came to mind. Kody's awkward remarks about Ysabel's prom dress, his disapproval of Gwendlyn's haircut, his micromanaging of how the girls dressed and acted. These weren't forgotten anymore. They were reread with a new, heartbreaking clarity. Hashtags started trending. Twitter threads were stretched. comment sections erupted. For the first time, the Browns' inner anguish wasn't limited to the family house or cut from the cutting room floor. It was out there. It was inescapable. And the daughters, they weren't remaining quiet any longer. Gwendlyn was the first to break her silence. In a courageous and honest video, she supported Tony's version, describing her own painful recollections. How the words of her father made her feel less than, how she was informed, in tiny and blatant ways, that being herself simply wasn't sufficient. Ysabel then posted a simple yet strong one, a picture of her prom dress. In the caption, she said how lovely and confident she had felt, until her father responded and shattered that happiness. 1 minute, she was a young woman about to burst into glory. The next, she was naked and ashamed. These were not merely stories. These were things we had all witnessed, now filtered through the lens of a reality we had yet to grasp. Then there were Christine and Janelle. They too had borne the brunt of Kody's manipulation, sometimes quietly. But this time, they came forth with intention. Christine live-streamed, her voice choked with tears, acknowledging that she had departed not only for herself, but to safeguard her children. Janelle, who ever the calm one, spoke out in an interview with People magazine, sharing what it was like to live in a state of being on eggshells at all times, to see her daughters diminish under the pressure of expectations they never consensually agreed upon. These were mothers opting to choose their daughters over the fantasy of a family that had died. Robin, on the other hand, defended Kody. She did interviews, maintaining that he was not understood, that he cared for his children tremendously. But nobody was believing it. Excerpts were pulled out in which Robin quietly supported Kody's strict rules, occasionally judging the other wives' daughters. To viewers, her loyalty wasn't so noble anymore. It read as enabling. The harm was irreparable. The family was broken, and the world was seeing it happen live. What ensued was not merely dramatic, it was earth-shattering. For the first time in history, the Brown family was no longer in control of the story. The daughters, who had perennially smiled through their embarrassment for television and harmony, finally had a voice. And something in the very dynamic changed. Ysabel, who had always been the quieter of the two, spoke out. She posted the now famous prom night photo, the same evening that her dad embarrassed her on TV. Her caption was honest and unfiltered, how proud she'd been picking out that dress, and how fast the cruel words of her father crushed everything. They remembered that moment, the expression on Ysabel's face, Christine's immediate hug, the sickening silence that followed. Gwendlyn went one step further. On social media and YouTube, she described years of being told she was too masculine, of never being quite the daughter her dad imagined. But above all her hurt, she talked about her freedom, of no longer having to bottle it all up. It resonated with thousands. Individuals who had experienced such dynamics within their own homes, who had long been invisible to the individuals they were supposed to love the most. Other daughters also found their voice, some in loud posts, some in quieter ones. They found empowerment not only in speaking out, but in being heard. And social media became more than just a platform. It was a community, a place of healing. Thousands of viewers poured in with words of encouragement. I see you. I experienced this too. Thanks for your bravery. For the first time, the daughters were more than TV reality stars. They were real women, with real experiences, real pain, and now real empowerment. The ripple effect was immediate. Those fans who had watched Sister Wives for more than 10 years started watching all over again with completely new eyes. Moments that were formerly dismissed as uncomfortable or innocuous now resonate differently. And as tweets in support of the daughters trended, individuals across the globe started sharing their own experiences of family domination, poisonous expectations, and the protracted path to recovery. Hook for next part, if continuing. But what comes next? Is the Brown family ever going to be able to get over this? Is reconciliation even possible? Or is the end of the era of sister wives as we know it coming? Stay tuned, because the fallout could be worse than the scandal itself. What had started as the dismantling of one family soon fueled something much bigger. It wasn't about the Browns anymore. It was about all the daughters who were reminded to be quiet. All the women who were instructed to make themselves small to maintain peace. What began as a scandal turned into a movement, a blaze, a battle cry that silence no longer benefited anyone. And at last, people were paying attention. The ripple effect didn't end with the Brown family. It rocked the foundations of the Sister Wives franchise and shook the walls of TLC. The louder and bolder the daughters' voices got, the more pressure mounted on the network. The old clips gained a sinister new significance. Audiences weren't giggling anymore, they were questioning. Then came the petitions. In one night, fans cried out for action. They cried out for accountability, for Kody's ouster, for TLC finally to deal with what had been right before their eyes for decades. Advertisers noticed too. Some withdrew their campaigns quietly. Others issued public statements of solidarity, joining the women who had escaped decades of emotional repression. And then the confirmation. An inside memo leaked, and it turned out that Kody had been suspended from production while an internal investigation was underway. Abruptly, crew members who had remained silent began speaking out. They brought up cringe-worthy moments that were edited out. Moments too real, too raw, too hurtful to Kody's reputation. Moments that might have altered the course of the show had they not been cut. But now they were emerging. Kody screaming at Savannah over her crop top, yelling at Truly for being sassy, brushing off Christine when she inquired about their daughter's well-being. Things that we had dismissed previously were now intolerable to neglect. And with that, the tide turned for good. This was no longer Kody's tale. The limelight fell upon the women, the wives, the daughters, the survivors. Christine and Janelle emerged not only as previous sister wives, but strong mothers, committed to healing their daughters. What started as survival turned into transformation. Christine, once discarded and forgotten, found joy once more, not merely in love, but in who she was. Her romance with David Woolley was not merely romantic redemption, it was a sign of reclaiming happiness. The fans rejoiced with her, not because she had recovered, but because she had awakened. Christine's tale wasn't only about love, it was about modeling self-worth, teaching her daughters that it's never too late to rewrite your story. In the meantime, Janelle discovered her strength in purpose. She moved to North Carolina, co-owning Tata Farms with her daughter Maddie and son-in-law Caleb. Her posts were a vision of peace, growth and stability. Even when confronted with unimaginable tragedy, such as the heartbreaking loss of her son Garrison, Janelle's strength remained a source of inspiration. And the daughters, they took flight. Ysabel followed her heart and enrolled in nursing school, committing to caring for others. Gwendlyn started a charity to help girls who were raised in strict religious households, an effort born out of experience. And altogether, the sisters forged a connection established not on duty, but on truth. Their social media became something greater than a site of filters and fan service. It became a reflection of reality. Brash, honest, exposed, a place for victories, losses, and unapologetic sharing. And their message, clearer than crystal, we belong to ourselves now. This next chapter in the Brown family saga isn't about surviving anymore. It's about reclaiming power, about healing wounds that were hidden for too long, about standing united, not as a caste, but as women who refuse to be defined by someone else's control. What we're witnessing is not a collapse, it's a rebirth. The Browns are no longer just a TV family, they're a symbol, a reminder that real strength isn't in submission, but in standing together. Not in perfection, but in authenticity. Looking back on all they have been through, we can't help but bear the full force of their change. Fear buried the truth for decades. But it took just one voice, Tony's, to set the other brave voices free. And now, there's no turning back. The daughters had their say. The wives took back their liberty. This story will never be the same. This was not another reality TV meltdown. This was about actual people deciding on truth, healing, and hope. And now I want to hear your thoughts. Did you notice the signs of trouble before the video was leaked? How did you feel seeing the daughters finally share their truth? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss. And if you haven't subscribed to Reality Recap yet, now is the time. The Browns are crafting a brand new chapter, and I'll be with you for each twist, each triumph, each truth that comes to light. Thank you for being a part of this community, for listening, for caring, and for standing behind the voices that finally didn't remain silent.